There's plenty going on in politics. I just want to ask you about this. Former US President Donald Trump sat down for an interview with Nigel Farage. He had some choice words for our US ambassador and former Prime Minister Kevin Rudd, saying that he heard Mr Rudd was a little bit nasty and not the brightest bulb. This is a fairly new story, but can I get some reaction from you? Trump said that if he was elected again, that Kevin Rudd probably wouldn't last long in that job in Washington. Quite an extraordinary statement from the former president, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, well, look, and I think it emanates from the fact that Kevin Rudd's had gratuitous advice for Donald Trump and what he thinks of Donald Trump. And I find it extraordinary that Kevin Rudd, who's had experience in the diplomatic corps and then as a Prime Minister, has wanted to weigh in on foreign politics and then ended up as the ambassador in the United States. It shows that he was a poor choice to start with. And now if we have a Trump administration, that we're going to have a very difficult time in negotiating with the new administration, particularly with things as important as AUKUS. And I think this is a problem for the government. They mismanaged this, and Kevin Rudd should have known better than to make disparaging comments about a potential future president of the United States. It showed a lack of judgement, and particularly someone that's had experience, not just as Prime Minister, but in the diplomatic corps. And I think Donald Trump obviously is lashing out at somebody that is there representing Australia that should have known better.
China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi is in Australia at the moment and is right now in bilateral talks in Canberra. He was spotted at a winery overnight as well. We still have those crippling trade sanctions in place on Aussie wines. Are you reading much into this?
Yeah, look, I hope that there'll be an announcement in the coming days that China will take away those punitive penalties that were unfounded to start with. But I think much of the heavy lifting has been done by the Chinese ambassador here. He's come here wanting to turn the page, and I've made it clear to him, as I know the government has, that they need to actually demonstrate with actions that the page has been turned, and removing those tariffs on wine is important. And I hope that we'll see that. It's important for the government to understand it'll take time for us to re-enter that market and get back on the shelves and into the households of Chinese people. But it's also important they continue to fight for, there's about 8 meat establishments that are still banned in China, as well as rock lobster. So it's important that China continues on this pathway, but a positive step. And I think what it's also important is that the government continues on that trajectory of defending the values and principles of our great nation, our democracy, without interference, and making sure that there is clear lines of delineation articulated to the Chinese government. And if there is, then trade should operate unimpeded, and that a rules-based world order of trade should be adhered to at all times.